you? You have stolen my dreams and my childhood with your empty words, and yet I'm one of the lucky ones. People are suffering, people are dying, entire ecosystems are collapsing. We are in the beginning of a mass extinction, and all you can talk about is money and fairy tales of eternal economic growth. How dare you?
One of the most important things, never, ever quit. Never quit. One of the things about loving what you do is that it's not work, and therefore you don't quit automatically. It's a lot easier not to quit. But you can never give up.
It's harder than a lot of you thought it might be. Sometimes it may make you feel like that it's not possible. You might want to give up.
We believe in you.
Don't give up. I don't want you to feel discouraged. I want you to understand that it just means we got to push that much harder.
That he gave his only begotten Son, that whosoever believeth in him should not perish, but have everlasting life.
Hey, hey, thanks for joining me for this live stream. This is something crazy is going on in the Millie Weaver story. It appears that Alex Jones or AJ has just fired Millie, and that is explosive, because if that's true, which it appears to be true, we'll go to this. I saw it on one of the comments from my last video I posted about this, and so I went to Twitter, and if you look right here in Twitter, J.K. Svirike wrote, "Alex fired Millie Weaver. Our take from what we saw in that video, we'd say Millie struck something real, and Alex, by comparison, is still riding training wheels. Yeah, his armored truck is cute." I also wanted to go over here to this site, which is where AJ posts videos of Millie Weaver, and over here are all the different channels on this site. And if you scroll through the channels here, you can see there's Caitlin Bennett, there's Tommy Robinson, Action 8 with what's her name, Savannah, but Millie's no longer over here at all. So you can see that her documentary is still featured, and it does say Millie Weaver. I don't want to click on it because I don't want to play it here, but she's actually not in here at all. So I don't know, what are your thoughts on this? Let's start a debate on what's going on here. So basically, the fact that AJ has fired her probably is going to give credibility to not her documentary, but in the conspiracy theory world, that's going to give credibility to the fact that what is alleged happened in Ohio is true, that she beat up her mother, took her cell phone, destroyed it or threw it away, and by AJ firing her, it's going to further discredit her. So it is kind of a weird development. I'm not sure what to make of it, to tell you the truth. But I did put together this video recently, which talked about what actually happened to Millie Weaver. Details are starting to emerge when it comes to the recent arrest of the InfoWars reporter or contributor Millie Weaver. And I think this headline is already a little deceptive and makes me skeptical of this article, but let's read it anyway, because boyfriend and brother threw mother to the ground and took her cell phone, police report says. Also, it's interesting, just based on the headline, that they don't mention that Millie Weaver did anything wrong. But let's read this and see where this story goes. Cleveland, Ohio. The felony charges against InfoWars correspondent Millie Weaver stem from an April incident where Weaver, her boyfriend, and her brother grabbed her mother, threw her to the ground, and stole her cell phone, according to a police report of the incident released Monday. Keep in mind that this case was filed and charged without the mother wanting to do it. The mother did not want to press charges. Weaver's mother, 51-year-old Felicia McCarran, told Portage County Sheriff's deputies on April 25 that she was recording audio of the trio verbally abusing her when they saw her cell phone in the back pocket and attacked her. A copy of the report obtained by Cleveland.com shows. The report contains written summaries from two deputies who said that Weaver, her brother Charles Chuck Weaver Jr., and her boyfriend Gavin Wentz gave conflicting stories that contradicted evidence at the scene. The story did not stand up to basic scrutiny in the form of a basic investigation, the report says. The report, obtained Monday by Cleveland.com, provides a window into the case against Millie Weaver, who was charged by secret indictment in July with robbery, tampering with evidence, obstructing justice, and domestic violence. The trio was arrested on Friday and held at the Portage County Jail until their Monday arraignment, where they pleaded not guilty. They were issued $20,000 bonds and released on their own recognizance. Her arrest spurred online conspiracy theories that her arrest was on charges of stealing government documents, then an intimidation tactic meant to silence a video that she set to release online. The video was released hours after her arrest. Interesting, but that video, which you can find online, and it keeps getting reposted and reposted, is being taken down by the social media giants, including this site, YouTube. So there is some credence to people wondering what's going on when she posts a video that is continually taken down, and even though it's never going to be suppressed, it seems like there is a movement out there to try to limit the number of people that watch it. Portage County. So this is interesting because if AJ did fire her, and it, by all appearances, that he has, I did some Google searches and I don't see any news stories about it. I went to the InfoWars site and there's no updates about it. All I can see is that Millie's channel, or where they post her videos, seems to be deleted, but there are still some of her videos on there. So I'm not sure what to make of this, but if the rumors are true that she was fired, then that's only going to discredit that Shadowgate video, because most people that would be watching that Shadowgate movie would be AJ fans, because he is one of the biggest conspiracy theories out there. And if he is firing her, then that would make me think that he doesn't really believe that story, or it makes me think that he believes that the incident that Millie did, the domestic abuse and the tampering with evidence and all that, is true. So he actually believes that, and he's like, all right, Millie Weaver's too crazy for me, so I'm going to fire her, which is insane. If you've ever, if you know anything about AJ, he is a very big, huge personality, and does very bombastic things. And so if he is firing Millie, which it appears has happened, then that would tend to probably discredit her and her video, which is an interesting aspect to this. But let's resume. Victor Galucci said Monday that he did not know who Millie Weaver was before the arrest, and that the case had nothing to do with her political beliefs or whatever she chooses to publish. As somebody, I myself was retaliated against for posting stuff online, but in my case, they didn't hide behind some secret indictment. They actually said that they were retaliating me because of what I posted online. At least they were brave enough to say that. Defense attorneys Eugene O'Brien and Troy Reeves, who are both listed as Millie Weaver's attorneys in court, did not return a phone call seeking comment on Monday. The initial call. The report says that McCarran came from California to stay with the trio at Wince's Yale Road home earlier this year after her employer in North Hollywood shut down due to the coronavirus. McCarran told deputies that Millie Weaver was swearing at her, being mean and calling her names on April 25, and she was texting with a bishop at the Mormon church where she attended about what was going on, the report says. Does anybody know in the comments if Millie is Mormon? I'm not. I don't know that. That would be an interesting little tidbit of information to get out there. Let me know in the comments so we can have a discussion, and definitely write in the comments any ideas that you have or any research that you find so that I can put it on the screen, because I want this to be kind of an interactive live stream about what's going on with Millie right now. She decided to record the behavior on her cell phone and placed it in the back pocket of her jeans while she made a grilled cheese sandwich. The report says Millie Weaver sat at the bar. Charles Weaver washed the dishes and Wentz stood nearby. The report said the trio began picking on her, including talking down to her and generally just being mean, McCarran told deputies. Someone noticed the phone in her pocket and suggested that she was recording, the report says. The report does not identify who first made the suggestion. McCarran said Wentz told Charles Weaver to grab her, and the two grabbed her arms, McCarran said. Millie Weaver joined in, and all three wrestled the mother to the ground, McCarran said, according to the report. McCarran said she tried to kick and punch them while they were on her. The cell phone fell out of her pocket, and someone grabbed it, the report says. McCarran then ran out of the house and said she was going to call the police. She ran to a neighbor's house and dialed 911. The report says that both McCarran and the neighbor saw Charles Weaver run to the edge of the woods behind the house and return almost immediately as McCarran was on the phone with deputies. McCarran suspected her son was trying to get rid of her cell phone, the report says. Deputies got to the home and spoke to Millie Weaver, Charles Weaver, and Wentz in the driveway, according to the report. Millie Weaver told deputies that her mother was mentally ill and unreliable and had become aggressive and pulled a knife on them, the report says. Millie Weaver told deputies that McCarran lost her cell phone 2 days earlier, and that may have triggered her to act out. A deputy later called the phone, and it rang several times before it went to voicemail, the report says. The deputy noted in the report that Millie Weaver paused numerous times and seemed to be thinking of the details as she spoke, and that whenever the deputy asked for specific detail on the incident, the trio paused and looked at each other before one spoke, as if looking for the right answer before one would be provided. Charles Weaver confirmed to deputies that he ran to the woods. He said that he was checking on a drainage issue in the yard and agreed to show them the area, the report said. The deputy noted that Charles Weaver first said he made the check about an hour before deputies arrived, before the incident involving McCarran, the report said. He later agreed that it was after the incident. As the pair was walking, the deputy said he asked Charles Weaver why there were no footprints in the mud other than the ones they were in the process of making, and he answered only that he was jogging earlier. The report said Wentz told another deputy that the flooding issue was in a different part of the yard from where Charles Weaver had taken the deputy, the report said. The deputy also this is a pretty peculiar part of the story, because so the narrative was that Wentz went in the back right after the incident happened and threw the mother's cell phone out back somewhere, and then the deputies were doing research to try to find it, and they wanted him to show. They didn't see marks in the mud, and the reason why the deputies were investigating that was because of reports from neighbors that he had thrown the cell phone back there. What makes no sense to me is that this report seems to insinuate that they never actually found a cell phone. And let's just face it, if there's a cell phone that's thrown in the backyard and you have the cell phone, and the deputy even called it and it rang a few times and went to voicemail, so it's on, I don't understand why they didn't find that cell phone, because the incident reports allege that there's no cell phone. So I guess they never found the cell phone or something. I don't know. Millie, in this report, told the police that her mother had lost the cell phone days earlier. So the narrative is just so peculiar with this story. And the more information that comes out, the more questions you have about what's going on. But Weaver, if it was odd that he chose to check on the drainage issue after McCarran ran out of the house screaming and that she was going to call the police. The report said. He answered that nobody thought McCarran would actually call the police. Charles Weaver later said that McCarran has a history of calling police at places she has lived in the past. The deputies confirmed the trio on the confronted the trio on the inconsistencies in their story and said they did not believe they were telling the truth. All three insisted they were telling the truth. One of the deputies told them they could face charges based on what McCarran said, and Wentz said he wanted to speak to an attorney. The report says the deputies told Wentz he was not in custody and he was free to walk away at any time. The report also says that Millie Weaver complained to the deputies that they were standing with an aggressive posture while they were interviewing them. The deputies noted that they were standing casually with their hands clutched in their vests. They asked Weaver how she would like them to stand, and she did not provide an answer. The report said that after the trio went back inside and the deputies were prepared to leave, Wentz and Millie Weaver then returned from their home, recording cell phone video asking the deputies for their names and badge numbers. Wentz later called the sheriff's department several times to complain about the deputies' actions, including that they did not read him his Miranda rights, the report said. The report said the deputies told Wentz several times that he was not detained in any way. The report also said that Wentz acknowledged while making the complaint that he did not provide all the details to the deputies because they were embarrassing, the report said. Deputies interviewed McCarran twice, once at the neighbor's house and then again at the university hospital in Portage Medical Center, where she was taken for evaluation and precaution. Both times, McCarran gave quick, clear, and precise answers, and her story was consistent, the report says. Deputies spoke to the bishop at the church, who confirmed many of the details that McCarran had relayed. The report says that Bishop said the last text message he received from McCarran was 26 minutes before she called 911 from the neighbor's house. Cell phone records obtained after the investigation also show that McCarran had later made a phone call a few hours before the incitement. At this time, it is suspected that Chuck, Gavin, and Millie took Felicia's phone from her by force under Gavin's command, and then said Chuck then likely disposed of Felicia's phone at the rear of the property when he was observed running to the rear for a brief time. After Felicia left the residence to call 911 to conceal the evidence of the crime. The report said the case would be referred to the county prosecutor's office to be presented to the grand jury. A person claiming to be Felicia McCarran on Friday left a comment on her YouTube video about the arrest. The comment said, Millie Weaver took her cell phone because she was recording an argument and claimed she had asked the police chief to drop the charges shortly after the arrest. Cleveland.com had been unable to reach McCarran to verify whether she made the comment. Ohio law allows prosecutors and law enforcement to move forward on prosecution without the victim's cooperation. Belushi said he was unaware if McCarran had made any request to drop the case, but said that it was ultimately the prosecutor's decision whether to pursue charges. This is an interesting story. There are a few things in there that sort of didn't make sense to me. Number one, the deputies should have been able to find the phone. If there were muddy footprints that they were making as he was bringing them, as Wentz was bringing them to a different spot, then the deputies should have been able to sort of canvass the yard and find the tracks. Also, the phone was ringing, they said, and so they should have been able to find the phone. I don't know. It doesn't say in this article that they found the phone, but that's curious to me. The other thing that's curious is they were saying that they came back out of the house and with cell phones and they were recording saying, what's your badge number, this and that. Usually, whenever people do that, it's not because they're guilty of something, it's because they're not guilty of something, and they specifically want to make a video to put out on YouTube or somewhere to get lots of hits. In fact, people that generally confront the police and ask for their badge and ID number and all this are not doing anything wrong, other than maybe they were pulled over for a minor traffic infraction. So that also is a little inconsistent with how this story was written. And this story was obviously written without getting comments from Millie, her boyfriend, her brother, or the lawyers that are representing them. So the only people contributing to this story were the police and the law enforcement. And of course, hey, so I'm going to break in here. It's very interesting how this unfolded, but in light of this new information that Millie appears to have been fired from InfoWars and is no longer a correspondent there, it makes you wonder whether AJ, the guy who heads up that site, no longer thinks that Millie is a credible person. And it's probably going to make the idea that her documentary Shadowgate is credible, except for the fact that he does still have Shadowgate on his site. So I think he sees that might be credible. I'm not saying whether it's credible or not. I'm just saying that it's interesting how this arrest happened right at the time where she was releasing that. And it does seem to give credibility to the movie. In fact, from a marketing standpoint, it's gold. You're releasing an anti-government corruption movie, and then the government retaliates against you, which I'm convinced is the case, because when you dissect all the details that are coming out about this, especially that the mother did not want to press charges, it just doesn't add up at all. Let's read this comment. Weaver, like Ruby Ridge Weavers, I doubt they're related. I don't know. If you have information, let me know. The Ruby Ridge Weavers is kind of an infamous incident, which most people on here probably know about, where this guy named Randy Weaver was living out in the woods with his family, kind of anti-government person, and the police, I don't remember all the details, but anyway, they wanted to talk to him or arrest him for some gun violations, I think, and they knew that he would be an interesting guy to apprehend. So rather than just confront him when he was, in town at the grocery store, they actually sent a team, a military, basically, team of snipers and military-style police officers in ghillie suits, and anyway, snuck up to his very rural mountain home and ended up getting into a standoff with his wife and him and his children. I think they killed his wife and one of his children. He's still alive, and eventually I think he turned himself in, or they were able to apprehend him, and I'm pretty sure he is still alive today, and I don't think he's in prison. I think he's free, but I don't think that Millie is related to him at all. But anyway, join the conversation. Let's kind of talk about what's going on with Millie here. I'm going to do a little research. Let's go to her Twitter feed and see if she's updated at all. I do not see where she has updated at all here. Her last tweet was, "Thank you, Mr. President, for sharing my video report," and that was on May 4. Well, that's a pinned tweet. So Steve Bannon and 4 other connected. So she tweeted about that. Here we go, all. I don't see any tweets where she says that she's no longer with InfoWars. Yeah, I don't see anything like that, but there are things out there. Let's see what this says. Looking for info. With all the controversy, I don't get why Alex fired her. Yeah, I'm the same way. I think it's curious why she was fired. It doesn't make sense to me because if there was, in the conspiracy theory world, if you wanted to discredit her video, you would have Alex Jones fire her, AJ fire her, for sure. And to me, what that tells me is that AJ believes that the incident did happen, and he believes that Millie is kind of a loose cannon or whatnot. Information came out in that article that I read about how Millie Weaver's mother suffered from mental disease, mental illness, and not everybody has family members with mental illness, but for people that do have family members with mental illness, some of the things in that report ring true. Like I gave the example of somebody with like Asperger's. That is a mental disease where you don't take social cues. And if her mother suffered from that particular mental disease, then nothing really seems odd about the reports in there. Because people with Asperger's, they don't pick up on social cues. So therefore, if you want to try to move on from having an interaction with them, sometimes you have to be rude, even mean. And they don't see it as rude or mean. They see it as just, oh, you don't want to talk anymore, and then they kind of move on. But in a normal environment, people that are watching may see that as rude and mean. And so maybe that's the case with Millie's mother. I don't know. Maybe if there's somebody in the comments that knows. They deleted my account for posting Shadowgate. That's interesting. I have heard stories about anybody that posts that is getting deleted or well, not their account, but the video is getting taken down or deleted. And that's the opposite. That actually makes people want to see the movie even more. So then they go to Google or they go to the dark web, they type in, they figure out a way to see the video. That site that I showed you earlier is a great way, that AJ site. And we do see, by looking at that her page over here, you can see Caitlin's page, you can see all these other pages on this site. This is that band site. Tommy Robinson, all these people are here, but Millie Weaver is no longer here. Millennial Millie, she used to be over here on the left. You could find her very easily, but you can see right here that her Shadowgate full film is still here. And I'm going to just click on it really. I hope it doesn't start playing. Yeah, so if you click on the link below her video, then her channel does come up. But her channel is no longer featured over here, so that's interesting. So her channel does come up, but it's no longer being promoted, and it looks like all her videos are still on her channel on this site. So that's interesting. So does anybody know, was she fired, was she not fired? Because from the reports I'm getting, I think she was. But I'm not sure what to make of it. It was because Roger, right? Why Alex fired her? Is that a narrative that's developing? Is that what's going on? I know that there was a recent Roger Stone a news that came out. In fact, he recently decided to end his pursuit of the appeal and for his conviction, because if he was able to successfully overturn his conviction, then they could just if he was trying to get it dismissed or dropped, if the judge did do that, then he could be re-prosecuted for the same thing. And so rather than put himself in legal jeopardy again, he decided just to drop the appeal, accept the conviction, and move on with his life. But I don't know, does that have anything to do with it? If they think physically attacking mom for a phone, they are mentally ill, not the mom. Yeah, I agree. There is, this is true. If the mom is not mentally ill or just has a mild form of a mental illness, and they are beating up the mom, and Millie is just letting it happen and insulting the mom, and if the narrative of that lawsuit, based on the article that we read earlier, does play out, then you're 100% right. They are wrong. And the fact that AJ decided to fire her, which it looks like he did, makes me think that he believes that she did in fact beat her mom up with her boyfriend. And I don't know, I don't really watch his show or anything. I don't know if he's going to comment on it today. I think he does a show from like noon to 3 or 4. So does anybody know if he commented on the show? Does anybody watch the show? It would be interesting to know if he actually told the reasoning why he fired her. But yeah, if the narrative in that story is true, I would say that Millie and her boyfriend and her brother are kind of not very cool people. But you have to be careful when you present that narrative, because if if the government's trying to discredit you, they want us to believe that. It's in their playbook. They put out some sort of false charge that's based on some semblance of reality so that you can't outright dismiss it, and then they promote it, and then all of a sudden things start happening in their life. They lose their sometimes they get fired by their employer, so it affects them financially. It affects them emotionally. They kind of feel kind of beaten down, and so they're not trying to defend themselves. So we can't deny that this is right out of the government playbook on discrediting somebody. And so we have to be careful when we say things like, if this is true, then they're real scumbags. But I will agree that the narrative that is starting to develop around this story, if true, makes them look really, really bad. And now the fact that AJ and InfoWars have severed ties with Millie Weaver, I mean, if InfoWars is firing you, then it gives more credibility to the allegations, and it detracts from the documentary. So if this is a smear campaign against Millie Weaver, it's a highly effective one. I don't know what else is going on. Let's see. And if true, she does have a mild mental illness, it makes it extra not okay. Well, I mean, this is what I was explaining earlier, that sometimes mental illnesses, the way you interact with people with mental illness is a little different than the way you would interact with people normally. Sometimes in order to communicate with somebody, like I gave the example of Asperger's, because as far as mentally ill people, that's kind of the only, I guess I have some experience with bipolar, but I have experience with Asperger, and I know that when you are communicating with them, sometimes it does look like you're being mean, but you're not. It's just the way you have to communicate with them to effectively get the message to them. So if the mother has something like that, this story kind of makes sense as written. Anything else, I'm not sure about different mental illnesses, but anything else kind of, I would agree, it doesn't look good. That's why I'm trying to confirm and kind of get a narrative of exactly what happened. Let's see what... Alex did not like what she said about Roger, I think. I keep falling asleep toward the end. Alex said it made Roger seem like a kingpin or something. That was in the documentary. So it could have been. That could have been the reasoning. My mom can be a psycho too. Lots of people are over-emotional, overreactors. That's a narrative that's in the story, basically, that the mother has mental disease, and they kind of were screaming and yelling at her, and then one of them realized that, oh, she has a phone in her pocket and it looks like it's recording. So then, according to the allegation, she then her brother and her boyfriend then kind of pinned the mother down, and they took the phone out, and then they ran into the backyard and threw the phone in the woods or something, or they deleted the video. Yeah, I'm not sure if that narrative is true, but that's sort of what is laid out. Yeah, that narrative is pretty psycho, but maybe the mother was instigating. I mean, we still don't know the full story. Let's see what this says. Josh M. Yeah, I kept saying that the biker guy showed up at his door. I think the biker guy is the guy in the documentary. This is the comment before that. AJ complaints are about an off-air interaction with Millie's male source in the documentary. Yeah, that's true. There was something going on with that male source because he was in the same town where Infowars is located, that AJ place is located, and he was prepared to go on air with AJ, but then he never went on air, and then Millie gets arrested, and then the documentary comes out, and AJ basically is ignoring that the guy is in the same town, and then the guy just gets on his bike and leaves. So there is some credibility to that. I don't know how much of credibility, but that is true. And then, of course, keep saying the biker guy showed up at his door. Yeah, that makes me wonder what's going on with that biker guy. Also, I watched the documentary a few times, and to me, I didn't understand about why, number one, Millie seemed really familiar and friendly with both the biker guy and Tori, the other person in the documentary that was the whistleblowers. And I mean, as I was doing research on this, I found videos about how Tori was at her house, probably was going to take care of her kids while she was in prison and things like that. And that just doesn't seem like a professional relationship you would have between a whistleblower and a reporter. It seems very personal, like a personal relation. I don't know what to make of that. I'm not saying that the documentary is not true or not true. That's not what my point is here. My point is just to try to figure out why was she fired? Right now, there's really nothing you can find online about why she was fired. Let's see. Watch documentary. It doesn't point at AJ or Roger Stone, RS. AJ or RS. I watched it a few times. I don't recall exactly pointing to RS, but I'm not going to say that it's not in there. I just don't remember that. Let's see. Anybody else have anything to say on that? Joe Malm said, pinning someone down and taking a possession is beyond mean. Well, it's about context. I would agree. Based on the way the story's laid out right now, it is pretty bad. But when you put it in the light of, this is straight up in the playbook of a government trying to discredit somebody, you gotta factor that in. I mean, you can't ignore the fact that this happened at the exact same time she was releasing a very explosive documentary. And the fact that the mother did not want to press charges. So that narrative needs to be laid out there. And then the narrative needs to be laid out, why would the prosecutor go out of her way to pursue these charges? Because if a prosecutor sees that a victim doesn't want to move forward, they don't want to create more work for themselves. They're going to just go along with it and be like, that sounds good, we're going to drop it. But they didn't. So why? That's a question that needs to be answered. My theory is that somebody in political power that knew what Millie Weaver was doing decided to put pressure on the prosecutor. And when the prosecutor said in the article that they didn't even know who Millie Weaver was until they filed these charges, that rings true to me. I don't have any reason to doubt that. But they getting pressure from somebody kind of above them to go ahead and proceed with the charges also rings true to me. So I think this was about retaliation. I don't think the government or the prosecutor or anybody involved was trying to stop the documentary from coming out, but it rings true to me that this was about retaliation. And I agree that pinning somebody down is beyond mean. But again, we have to talk about context here. In context, there are situations where pinning somebody down is perfectly acceptable. Like if they're having a seizure, you pin somebody down. Well, we don't know if the mother had mental illness where they violently hurt themselves. Pinning them down would be good. I mean, think about somebody who's trying to commit suicide by cutting their wrist, and they have a knife, and their roommates or whatever pin them down. That's acceptable. So we need to definitely be careful when we there are reasons why pinning the mother down may have made sense, and those reasons haven't come out yet. But based on what has come out, I would say it's disturbing. But again, I go back to the idea that the government has a playbook for discrediting people, and when they make up obscure charges, petty charges, which, let's face it, the mother didn't want to press charges and they went ahead with them anyway, this would qualify as meeting the criteria for a government playbook to discredit you. And then, of course, now we're having this discussion where we're seeing Millie and her boyfriend and her brother in a sort of a bad light. And so you can see how that playbook works really well. That's why they continually use it over and over and over again. Not because they're trying to help her documentary get steam. They knew they were never going to be able to prevent that documentary from coming out. They used the playbook to discredit the documentary. That's the reason that all this is happening, to discredit the documentary. And that's my opinion. I have no idea whether that's true or whether that's not true, but to me that rings very true. Let's keep this conversation going here. Maybe you could look into the facts then before pontificating. True, you make a very good point. Letting the facts come out would probably be important, but right now the discussion that we're having is why did AJ and Infowars sever ties with Millie Weaver? This is kind of explosive and breaking, because I would say that if that's true, and it appears to be true, then it further discredits the documentary and it plays right into the government's hand. And now conspiracy theorists who respect and support, AJ, are now going to look at Millie Weaver in a different light. So, I mean, it's pretty explosive, because basically it's saying that AJ believes what's coming out in the news, that she beat up her mother. To me, that's what that says. And it's okay to pontificate about and speculate about the news. That's one thing about freedom of speech. We have the right to speculate and to form opinions and to express opinions. And also, what's important about doing this right now is this is research for others, because people that kind of may have some information that wouldn't otherwise express it in a forum like this, they'll come out and they'll express it, whether in the live stream comments or in the comments afterwards. Things like this are used by police and law enforcement all the time, and including private investigators like myself, all the time for aiding the investigation. You see this with like Amber Alerts or things like that, where you have they'll put out release information, partial information or opinions or speculation to the public. The public will react to it and respond to it, and then they'll use that reaction to further the investigation. So you have to be careful about that. Let's see what... AJ fired her for her optics, so people won't question his involvement, my guess. Yeah, that's a theory. But that theory doesn't really ring true to me, because what makes more sense to me, rather than this, which is it's a very articulate theory, what makes more sense is ever since AJ was banned from all the major social media platforms, he's probably suffered financially, and he has, as far as I'm aware, has been able to maintain his overhead for the last year since he was banned from everything. And from the little bit I know about his operation, he has a huge building, he has multiple studios, he has a whole staff of people, he has editors and researchers and correspondents, and he's doing tons of different things. So he has tons of overhead there, and what makes more sense to me is he's using this opportunity to kind of get rid of some of his overhead. But that's a good point. If I miss your comment, then just retype it so that I can see it. I'm trying to find another comment here to bring to the screen. Anyone who is afraid to point the finger at the tribe is a gatekeeping shill. Let me analyze this. Anyone who is afraid to point the finger at the tribe is a gatekeeping shill. I see what, so for instance, if you are of a political party, let's say, I think this is what this is saying, like a Republican or a Democrat, and you see, actually there's a good example of this. Rather than use politics, let's use police officers. In the law enforcement community, we talk about there being, the majority of police are good and there's just a few bad apples. But, and that is true. I do agree with that, but except for one caveat, and that's that when the good police officers see the bad apple and don't call them out for their corruption and what they're doing that's bad, then doesn't that really make them a bad apple too? So I came up with a saying, actually I put it on a t-shirt and it's in my store, good cops don't defend bad cops. And when you really analyze that, it basically says there's no good cops, because you've never ever, it's very rare you hear stories about cops calling out their brothers who do bad things. It does happen, but it's more of the exception rather than the rule. Let's read this comment. A prosecutor would want to pursue it because 3 people pinned down an elder is serious enough to look into without the victim's desire to press charges. A great point. I agree that that would, I predicted, if you watch some of my earlier videos, that would be the narrative that would come out, is that they didn't prosecute her in retaliation. They prosecuted her because they beat up an elderly lady, and we have elder abuse problems in our country, so we need to protect the elderly. I predicted that narrative would come out, but it's it's a true narrative. It's a true, it's something that should be taken seriously, but I don't buy into it because I know how prosecutors work. Prosecutors, they want high win rates. It's about winning, and if your case would be so much harder to prove without the mother's cooperation, and if she doesn't want to press the charges, then why press the charges? Not to mention that in this case, pressing the charges makes the mother, puts the mother in a very uncomfortable position where now, keep in mind that not only was Millie, her daughter, involved, but her son was also involved. 2 of her children were involved. This makes me think that there's credibility to the idea that this was a mental illness episode and that's all it was. But 2 of her children are involved and her daughter's boyfriend are involved. To force her to testify against 2 of her children, it would be pretty emotionally traumatic for the mother. Why would a prosecutor want to do that? It just doesn't ring true to me. So while I understand that this is a theory, and if I was trying to play a lawyer game and I was just trying to win or create a narrative like politicians do where you just lie through your teeth or whatever, this is the exact thing I would say. I didn't prosecute her because I'm retaliating against her or any other reason. I prosecuted her because we need to protect elderly people. And it could be true. I'm not trying to discredit it, but it just doesn't ring true based on all that's coming out to me at least. Let's go to this next comment. The world is an evil place. That is why I watch from the sidelines. I gotta agree with you there. Things are crazy in the world. And we're all going to be watching from the sidelines. Actually, we may be drawn into the fight. We may be drawn into... Because come November 4, we're going to wake up to a new world. Because whether Trump wins, or Trump loses, or Joe Biden wins or loses, if Trump loses, the right is going to lose their mind and say the election was stolen. If Trump wins, the left is going to lose their mind and say that the Trump cheated. And either way, I see blood in the streets. I can't see a scenario where there's not going to be blood in the streets, unless there is one scenario, so I need to correct myself. The one scenario I see where maybe we're not going to have a complete civil war, a cold civil war, whether it's cold or warm, I see a civil war happening after November 4. In fact, some would say we're already in it. But the only way I see we avoid that is if one of them landslides, whether Joe Biden landslides or Trump landslides. Then the side that loses is going to have a hard time saying this wasn't the will of the voters. And that would be the one scenario I see, whether one of them has like a 49-50 state landslide. And when you look at the programming on both sides say that their candidate's going to landslide. So I don't see that happening either. I think it's going to be a close election. There's going to be blood in the streets after it's all decided. I bet this guy wears a mask. Well, interesting. I think that that's actually a compliment that you would not know, because I am very independent. I try to make my content middle of the road. I really respect people that stay in the middle. And one curse of being in the middle is that everybody hates you. People on the left hate you. People on the right hate you. Everybody hates you. And I will say, whether I wear a mask or not, I live in a state where if you go into a store, you have to wear a mask. And if you don't wear a mask, I live in Massachusetts and Boston. So if you don't wear a mask in a store, I tried it once. I tried not wearing a mask in a store once, and everybody in the store yelled at me, the employees, the other people. So I just lifted up my shirt real quick, and I realized at that point that until this craziness, this COVID nonsense goes away, you're going to have to wear a mask. So I wear a mask in public, but I don't think you need to wear a mask. My opinion is you don't need to wear a mask. I don't think that it helps at all. But I do wear a mask whenever I go out in public, when I go into a store. If I'm just walking on the street or something, I'm not one of those guys who has a mask on in my car or walking on the street. And my politics are straight down the middle. I lean a little to the right. So that's that comment. But it is a compliment that you wouldn't know one way or the other. Theft is a good reason to pin someone down and get your property back. Yeah, so that was the narrative that first came out. We were talking about this incident, and we thought that the mother had stolen property or taken pictures of classified information, and they were trying to get it deleted off her phone. And that's still, even in the most recent information that has come out, still is not totally disproven. But I think the narrative shifted a little bit from stealing property back to now. And again, this article I just read does not dispel the notion that the mother had taken classified information, or not classified, but private information from Millie, and she had it, and they were trying to get that back. But it does sort of change the narrative a bit to the mother was recording a confrontation, and they just wanted to delete the video recording or the audio recording off her phone. So that's interesting. Remember she said her intro. I'm not sure where you're going there. You probably commenting. Let's see. Alex never promoted that movie really at all. Yeah, well, it's on his site. I can confirm that. It's definitely on his site, but I don't really watch Alex, so I don't know if that's what you're saying. And also, if anybody does watch him, AJ, did he say anything on his show today, just out of curiosity? And what did he say? Put it in the comments. Jones and InfoWars has discredited themselves by going against Millie, or the opposite's true. By firing Millie, he's discredited Millie, because there are probably a lot more people that support him in the conspiracy theory world than support her. So, or the opposite. So let's see what else we have here. She said her Intel connection was slow. Her internet connection was slow. Alex talked about how important it was for them. No information now. Something has changed. Yeah, so I heard that as she was trying to do the final touches on this documentary she was putting out, that she felt like her internet was being throttled, and then she complained about it. She saw suspicious things on her phone, and she was sending messages back and forth with AJ about how something was weird. Something's really weird today, and so she kind of had a sixth sense that was sensing something was weird, and then all of a sudden a sheriff knocks on her door, shows up, and arrests her. So, yeah. We are all pontificating. Relax. Again, I address this. Pontificating in speculating about an ongoing news story is an important way to get the facts out there, especially when it's sort of a story that is on the fringe like this one. It's an investigative technique, so I would say chill out a bit. Pontificating is okay. That is the point of doing a live stream, to have a discussion. So chill out there. Millie is in over her head. AJ is closer to the situation, probably knows more than he's saying. Yeah, and that's why my opinion, my speculation is that he thinks that probably what is being alleged is true. The brother and Millie and the boyfriend did do something. But if I remember correctly, I think that he only said good things about Gavin and Millie in the past. So maybe there's something else going on here. I agree. If anybody has theories, please write them in the comments. If you didn't hear him on MIN, he's pretty much fired her on live. He said he wasn't sure if this relationship would continue, meaning she was going. Yeah, and all the speculation about this with the timing, all this timing is really awkward, but if I were to put motives behind why he decided to kind of let her go, I would say it's because he's getting more and more financially strapped as a result of being banned on all the social media platforms. He has really high overhead, and he kind of maybe saw this as an opportunity to get rid of that overhead. That would be my thought on that. No, I disagree. Millie's work stands on its own. Jones and Infowars only hurt himself and his brand. Yeah, I mean, that's a fair assessment, and it's a good opinion. But I wouldn't necessarily attribute the worst possible motive for why he got rid of her, and I wouldn't attribute necessarily that what we're getting in the news is 100% true. And if I were to guess, I would say the charges against Millie, her boyfriend, and the other are probably going to be dismissed, or they'll win in court, because without the mother's cooperation, it's going to be kind of hard to make a case against them. With her notoriety, why not go full independent? And she does have notoriety, so she's going to be fine. You're right. She's going to be fine as far as her following. In fact, it may increase not being associated with InfoWars, because her association with InfoWars is kind of a black mark with a certain sector of the population. Not all of them. I mean, some people think that this site is a great site, but let's face it, it is a banned site. It is associated with some pretty disturbing things. So, like some conspiracy theories that were proven to be wrong, which I disagree with them being banned. I'm totally a free speech person, and the fact that they were banned, it just really makes me upset. Having watched the video, it is bound to attract attention. You're talking about the Shadowgate video, and also the fact that it's being deleted, and people that are watching it are and reposting it are having their entire social media accounts banned. So this is an important discussion to have. I'm not saying one way or the other whether the video is true or whether it's not true, but all the events surrounding it give a serious credence to the idea that there's something to this video. AJ has been backing off since the many legal attacks he's had to endure. And that goes to my theory about the financial aspect of it, that he has a lot of overhead, he pays a lot of lawyers, he's being sued constantly like a lot of people are. And probably severing ties with Millie means that he doesn't have to pay her. So that helps his bottom line. This commenter said that AJ will suffer as a result of this. I highly doubt it. His following is just too loyal. If he was able to survive being banned on all major social media platforms, I doubt severing ties with Millie Weaver, especially in light of these charges that may end up being true, and she may become convicted of them. I can hear the facts and can tell it's your opinion in theory. I'm not denying that. Having opinion in theory is the point of having a discussion about this. My opinion in theory is definitely that the government retaliated against her. I have been a private investigator for 18 years. I testify in court all the time. I'm around police officers all the time. I know what prosecutions look like, and I know that prosecutors rarely will take a case when the victim decides they don't want to press charges. The only time they'll do it is when they really strongly believe that it's in the interest of public safety. But even that's kind of a stretch, because let's just face it, our justice system is not about justice. Our justice system is basically the police arrest you for whatever reason. Sometimes the police arrest you because you weren't the first person to call them. That happens all the time. The first person to call is the one that is given more credibility. Like an example would be is if a boyfriend beats up his wife and then or his girlfriend, and then he calls 911 because she's laying on the floor bleeding, and he tells a narrative to the 911 dispatcher, and when they get there, they totally buy into the boyfriend's narrative, despite the fact that there's clearly a girl that's gone through something. Like she tripped and hit her head and this and that, and the officers can see what's going on here, but they don't move forward with it, or they do move forward with it, and then it goes to the next level where it's in a court, and the court is not about justice. The court system is one lawyer playing a intellectual game with another lawyer, and a third lawyer moderating this intellectual game. And neither the defense attorney, the prosecutor, or the lawyer that's overseeing the debate cares about what justice is. They only care about, did you make the right maneuver? That legal maneuver is pretty clever, so I'm giving the case to you. Or your defense attorney made a great argument, so I'm giving the case to them. The truth is just lost in it all, and that's just the facts of the matter. AJ, big mistake. Stand by your people. I don't know. This argument, let's just flip this a little. And let's say that let's go to the debate that we're having in the public right now. A police officer messes up. And like, for instance, the George Floyd thing where the cop, kneeled on him until he died. And his boss decides to fire him. Would you make this same argument that you shouldn't have fired Officer Chauvin because he killed that? You should have stood by your people. So when you flip the argument a little, it sort of makes me a little, even though I understand the argument that this does hurt Millie Weaver because probably he got rid of her because he believes that the allegations coming out are true. I think that we do need to have a little perspective there. Let's see here. She has similar features as Sarah Weaver, is why I asked. So hard to find. I think I missed something. Oh, Sarah Weaver is, yeah, that's right, the wife of Randy Weaver, the Ruby Ridge incident. That's what this is. Hard to find family info on Millie. Same with Bennett. I guess you're referring to Caitlin Bennett. Yeah, I think the firing is financial in nature too, like cutting a fire line. It just makes that's what rings true the most to me. Unfortunately, it's like throwing Millie under the bus, because if Alex is trying to find ways to trim out his overhead, and getting rid of her trims out a little bit of his overhead because he suffered so financially, it is like throwing Millie under the bus, because if there was ever a time where you should have kept her and then maybe fired her in 6 months or 4 months or 5 months or whatever, it would have been now, because right now, firing her now totally gives credit to the allegations against her and discredits her documentary. So I have to agree with you there. Using that logic, you are right. There are few to none. I think I need to scroll down to the bottom of the comments or something. I'm a little behind, so. Children Protective Services involved, so she needs to be on her toes. Yes, you are 100% correct here. That is one of the consequences of having a charge like this, is now CPS gets involved. And unfortunately, CPS is one of those, like the example I was talking about where the justice system doesn't care about justice. It's just two lawyers that are fighting with each other, and whoever makes the better lawyerly argument wins. CPS is the same way. They don't care about the children. They just, I think their intention is to care about the children, but in the end, they don't. Children always grow up, well, I shouldn't say always. Children usually are best when they're with their mother and their father. There's still a loyalty factor. They run with the pack. I agree. But like I said earlier, flip that argument. You can't have it both ways, because if you are mad that police have a loyalty pack where the good officers rally around the bad officers that screw up, then you can't have it both ways, where you are going to say the same thing about organizations like news organizations or Alex Jones. Think about, for instance, ABC News had to get rid of Matt Lauer because of what he did. Think about if they had have decided to rally around him, or Fox News got rid of like Bill O'Reilly because of what he did, or PBS got rid of, now I forget his name, because of what he did. Sometimes when you flip those same situations to then government agencies or police agencies in particular, it completely destroys that sort of statement and that argument. He did not fire her. She was never an employee, and that's true. That's 100% true. She was a subcontractor, so she was not an employee. But he did fire her because he took her off, like for instance, he took her off this site, even though she's not on the side here, even though her channel's still up, she's not on the side here at all. So I would say, sorry, you can't see that. Let me redo that. He took her off this site here. Even though her channel's up, she's not over here on the side. She's been deleted. Normally, I think she was next to Caitlin Bennett. She's not there anymore. So, yeah. Let's see if Millie's posted anything here on Twitter. I'm going to refresh Twitter. Let's see if there's any new posts. Nope, still no new posts. So she hasn't addressed this developing thing about being fired. But Anyway, police always protect each other. Only when pressure or evidence is brought forward, then you can make a judgment about it. Yeah, I would agree that waiting for the information to come out is important, but having a live forum sometimes helps bring that information out. So we should never be afraid of having discussion and speculating and forming opinions in the digital public square, which this is. You know, back in the 1800s, you see shadows of this in small New England towns. There was always this town green in the center of town, and people were always flooding to that because there was no TVs back there. Back then, there wasn't a lot of things to do inside. After a long, hard day of work and milking the cow or whatever you were doing, gathering your food, planting your garden, gathering your garden, people would go and stroll around the green, the public green. That's why in a lot of these old New England towns, in southern towns, a lot of places, they have this town green where, and it's usually really big, or that's because back in the 1800s, people would walk around and they would push their kids around in strollers. They would play. They would toss balls around, and they would talk about ongoing discussions about what was in the public square. Well, in today's age, that public green has become the digital forum and social media, and so there's nothing wrong with talking about ongoing events and forming opinions in the digital public square. Keep pontificating. I was only saying no need to respond. Most can tell difference between fact and opinion. I agree with that. There will be a trigger financial hit for AJ because she will not push those supplements. That's true. Although I question, I know that I had a debate with somebody about those supplements because a lot of those supplements, let's be honest, they are probably, you could get them a lot cheaper at CVS or Walgreens. He overprices them. There's no question. And you pay like 3-4 times what you can get them the same thing at Walgreens. In the debate that I had, and the conclusion was that probably people know that they're overpaying, but they don't mind overpaying because they want to support him, and I can accept that. And I doubt that he will be hurt that much by getting rid of Millie. I think probably the fact that he has to give her money out of the supplements that her site promotes, and also probably pays her for contributing to his site, he figures will be a better reward than keeping her. But again, that's my opinion. We really don't know the reason. One reason could easily be that AJ believes that the allegations against her are true. I never took Bennett seriously, the gun girl in a bikini. That's a good... I'm not sure how to respond to that. Other than that, I was highly disturbed by the incident recently where she goes and does her thing, whatever her thing is, at some college. And then basically, based on the reports I got back, the entire college basically came out and started yelling, screaming, throwing water bottles and urine and feces at her. And it was only but for the grace of God that she was able to get out of there with her life. That story was highly disturbing to me about her. So I'm not seeing any updates. This live stream has sort of died down, so I think I'm just going to go ahead and end this now. I appreciate the debate that we have had about this. It does appear that Millie Weaver has been terminated, fired, cut ties with Infowars and that site. And it does appear that as the narrative of what happened is coming out, that it, in my opinion, falls right in line with the government's playbook to discredit somebody that they don't like. I do not think that they ever intended for her documentary to not get out. That wasn't the reason. And I don't think the prosecutor was planning on prosecuting this I do think there was political power put pressure on that prosecutor, and I do think that this is a retaliation tactic by the government. I have no evidence one way or the other whether that's true or not, but that's my 2 cents on this. Continue the discussion in the comment section, and I really appreciate everybody joining. This was a fun debate to have, and this breaking news, I'm sure later today we will know more information, but as of right now, I think we've done a pretty good job at covering this. I'd like to give a shout out to the Maine Fusion Center, a secret Maine State Police Department set up in the wake of 9/11 to spy on terrorists, but now spy on anybody who's a little critical of the state of Maine. They have spied on me, they've spied on peaceful protesters, they've spied on people that were against a power line going through Maine, they've spied on Black Lives Matter protesters, and they are my most loyal fan. They've watched all my videos, read all my posts, so a big shout out to the Maine State Police Fusion Center. These videos do take a lot of time. I don't make money on them, so if you would not mind, go check out my website, nationalsi.com, and if you know anybody who does insurance fraud assignments, insurance adjusters, lawyers, please email me their contact information so that I can reach out to them. I'm in the New England area. I'm licensed in Massachusetts, New Hampshire, Vermont. I work in Rhode Island, and also I'm down in the South too, in Tennessee. So any of those areas are great. If you know people that are in the industry, please forward their information. It would be very, very helpful. Also, check out my store. You can buy cool t-shirts and mugs and different things that help support my work. I just want to get to the truth. That's my goal with every case, with every story that I do, and the truth and uncovering the truth is very important, no matter where it leads.
Let not your heart be troubled. Ye believe in God, believe also in me. In my Father's house are many mansions. If it were not so, I would have told you. I go to prepare place for you. And if I go and prepare place for you, I will come again, and receive you unto myself, that where I am, there ye may be also.